You note in paragraph 62 that you've tried to find some documentation since these fires and you haven't been able to locate it.
Yes, one of the systems that we have in place is that the MCV, or the mobile communications van, is that we must document everything that is processed, even if the requests going through to the ICCs are negative, or whatever the response is, everything is logged. It's important, so if a coroner needs to have a look at it, then it's important that the documentation is there. And to my horror, I found that all the documentation is gone. It's missing.
Final point I want to ask you about is the matter you address at paragraph 49 onwards in your statement. You're familiar with the stay or go policy?
I am.
And have you attended meetings where it has been explained to community members?
Yes, I have.
And you say in paragraph 49 it's impossible for ordinary people to understand. What do you mean by that?
I mean that, and I can only talk about our own circumstances, that the fire had been burning for 2 days and nobody felt threatened. I understood that the Creamery Road fire, and we had that under control. There was no question the following day we did. We patted ourselves on the back and said, fantastic. But the residents didn't feel threatened. And it was only on the day of the fire itself that we had a community meeting, and I felt, well, hang on a minute, the fire's been burning for 2 days. Where are the triggers to allow these people to make a decision to stay or go? And there weren't any. And of course, because of the lack of information from the ICC, I couldn't give them any information, and I obviously only guessed. And everything I did on the day was knee-jerk reaction to a situation that was quite threatening. Yeah.
Were there risks attached to the decision you made to set the siren?
Absolutely. And I'll put this, if the fire had been travelling at 5 kilometres an hour and the spotting range was between half a kilometre and a kilometre, and the spotting had happened in town and the siren is in town, there would have been a lot of people dead. A lot.
The only final matter I just want to clarify, Mr. Sigmund, was when you mentioned the documentation missing from the MCV, what's the name of the documentation that's missing? Is it a particular type of log, or what sort of document is it?
We have voice data logs, which, although I've requested it several times, nobody's willing to transpose for me. We have written documentation and note-taking by the MCV operators, and these are notes that they jot down so that they can put it into a formal form later on, because we're under pressure all the time, and all that documentation is missing.
And where would you normally expect it to be stored?
It must be logged at where the MCV is stored, which in this case is Newborough, at the Newborough Fire Station. And even though I had my BASO, which is the brigade officer, search high and low, and she's a pretty tough girl, she couldn't find it.
One final matter I overlooked, Mr. Sigmund, in relation to debriefs, you've also, since this statement, now had an interagency debrief.
Correct.
And that was held Monday this week.
Correct.
Representatives from the DSE and CFA attended.
That's correct.
The area manager for Region 10 was there.
Yes.
That person's name is?
Malcolm McKenzie.
Was anything documented in writing at that interagency debrief?
No, there was nothing documented. It was the most unusual debrief I've ever been to. I think they trialled a new type of debrief, and we, in actual fact, had nothing put in writing. We wrote things on the wall and did all this sort of interactive stuff, and we were asked to take away ownership of what we felt were the salient points of the whole thing, the whole exercise. And of course, to take ownership, you need to have something in writing. In other words, the onus was put back onto the volunteers and all the management without really looking at what the problems were. And the points that came up at that meeting, and this is the interagency meetings, is no different from what they were years ago. They are still the same problems. The CFA really hasn't got its act together yet.
And what the matters that were raised at the interagency debrief, did they include any of the matters that you have raised in your statement in these proceedings?
All of them. And I found out more information which was relevant to me, and I can only talk about my own fire, that because of our incident action plans and the systems that we have in place, the mobile phone numbers are given to all the sector commanders, divisional commanders, are written on the incident action plan, which means that anybody in any tanker because the crew leaders get a copy of it, can ring the incident control centre. And we believe, and I believe to this day, that this is exactly what happened. Now, one person from Parks Victoria was in the incident control centre and confirmed that the system was so choked with mobile phone calls that nobody could get through, which really presented a big problem for everybody. Yeah.
And was the matter of you setting the siren in Boolarra, was that raised at the interagency debrief?
No, everybody's run away from that. I was chastised for that, actually, and so be it. But the reality is that setting the siren is really about having ground observers in place so that you get early warning and then you can set a siren, or you can implement some other sort of warning system. But we had no ground observers. That means we had nobody trained and nobody out there at the coalface to let the ICC know what the hell's going on here. And we had 3 fires burning for 3 days. And of course that in itself creates logistical problems and a whole range of other tactical problems, and it really caused the town to actually burn.
Thank you, Mr. Sigmund. I'm sure there'll be parties who seek to cross-examine.
Sure.
Maybe after. After, Mr. Doyle.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sigmund